primitive fusion containment, inefficient heat management, redundant power routing. Valkesk's secondary appendages twitched with barely contained derision as the scan results populated his display. How do these humans even manage spaceflight? The derelict human warship hung against the backdrop of stars, its angular hull bearing the scars of recent combat. The HSS Thermopylae. The name had taken their linguists 3 hours to pronounce correctly, was a testament to everything the Scytheri found baffling about human engineering. High Commander, preliminary analysis suggests their technology is at least 4 centuries behind our current standards, Valkesk reported, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue light of the research vessel's bridge. Permission to begin detailed examination of their systems. High Commander Ixel's response crackled through the ship's comm system. Granted. The Imperium eagerly awaits your findings, lead researcher. Valkesk deployed the examination drones, their sophisticated sensors prodding every inch of the human vessel. Each new data point only reinforced his initial assessment. The humans used physical wiring instead of quantum pathways. Their reactor shielding was meters thick, rather than utilizing graviton fields. Their weapon systems required actual ammunition. Look at this, he gestured to his assistant, Renta. They're using mechanical pumps for coolant circulation. Mechanical, like primitive combustion engines. Renta's analysis tendrils coiled thoughtfully. But lead researcher, if their technology is so inferior, how did they manage to establish themselves as a significant power in this sector? Clearly through sheer numbers and blind luck. Valkesk dismissed the concern with a wave of his primary manipulator. Their ships are like their bodies. Crude, inefficient, but stubbornly persistent. The drones continued their methodical dissection of the Thermopylae systems. Valkesk was already composing his report to the Imperium in his mind. This would establish Scytheri technological supremacy once and for all. They would demonstrate how to properly implement these basic principles of spacecraft design. A sudden ping from his console interrupted his thoughts. Energy spike in their auxiliary systems, Renta reported. Something's activating. Impossible. Their reactor is cold. Valkesk checked the readings himself. Run a diagnostic on our sensors. But before they could identify the source, a burst of encrypted data pulsed from the human ship, threading through subspace like lightning. Their sensors tracked it for 3 seconds before it vanished. Some sort of automated distress beacon, Valkesk concluded, using outdated compression algorithms, no doubt. Flag it in the report and continue the analysis. The Imperium will be most interested in. A second ping, this time from deep within the Thermopylae's hull. Lead researcher, Renta's voice carried an edge of concern. I'm detecting a pattern in their system layouts. These redundancies, they're not random. Valkesk turned to respond, but the words died in his throat. On his display, the human ship's schematics were beginning to rearrange themselves, revealing something that shouldn't exist in such primitive technology. The trap had been baited, and they had taken it perfectly. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Scytheri Imperium blazed with crystalline light as Valkesk presented his findings. 3-dimensional holograms of the Thermopylae systems rotated above the gathered Admiralty, each one annotated with his team's improvements. As you can see, Valkesk gestured with his primary appendages. Human engineering relies heavily on brute force solutions. Their reactor shielding, for instance, uses layers of tungsten and ceramics rather than proper graviton containment. Appreciative clicks echoed through the chamber. The Scytheri prided themselves on elegant solutions, on efficiency through complexity. Human engineering was an affront to their sensibilities. We've already begun implementing superior versions of their basic designs, Valkesk continued. Early tests show power efficiency improvements off. Pardon the interruption. A voice cut through the chamber. The assembled Scytheri turned to face the unexpected sound. A human diplomatic party stood in the entrance, led by a silver-haired woman in a crisp naval uniform. Admiral Chen, Systems Alliance Navy. She strode forward, boots clicking against the crystalline floor. "I believe you have one of our ships." Valkisk's exoskeleton rippled with indignation. The vessel was abandoned, under galactic salvage laws. "The HSS Thermopylae," Chen interrupted, "is still commissioned. We're here to recover it." High Commander Ixel rose from his seat. "This is an outrage. We've already begun integrating its technology into our fleet. The research value alone is precisely zero." Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You've had the ship for what, 3 weeks? Tell me, have you noticed anything strange about its systems yet?" Valkesk felt his secondary heart skip a beat. The missing components in their scans, the patterns Renta had noticed, the encrypted burst transmission. "Your primitive technology," he began, "has already been copied into your newest destroyer escorts." "Yes, we know." Chen's smile widened. "The countdown began the moment you started scanning our ship. I'd estimate you have about 6 hours left." The chamber erupted in clicking protests and demands for explanation. Valkesk frantically pulled up his latest analysis on a datapad. There, in the corner of the systems diagram, something shifted. A pattern he hadn't noticed before, threading through every system they'd copied. "What have you done?" he whispered. "Done?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "We left a warship where you'd find it. You chose to study it, to copy it, to mock it. Everything that happens next is entirely your doing." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Valkesk, those inefficient redundancies you removed from our designs, they weren't inefficient. They were containment systems." The datapad in Valkesk's hands chimed with an alert. Across the Imperium, the first wave of system failures was about to begin. They had 6 hours to prevent a catastrophe. And somehow, Valkesk knew the humans had planned it this way from the start. Valkesk stood in the observation deck of the Imperial testing grounds, watching his modified destroyer perform maneuvers that should have been impossible. The human-derived systems had been successfully integrated into 5 ships now, each one showing performance far beyond initial projections. "The power output is 300% above baseline," Renta reported, her appendages dancing across multiple holographic displays. The human's primitive reactor design, once properly refined, is remarkably efficient. "See," Valkesk gestured triumphantly at the viewport. "Their warning was nothing but empty threats. We've improved their crude designs, stripped away the unnecessary redundancies." The countdown passed 2 days ago, and nothing. A piercing alarm cut him off. Energy spike in the test vessel's core. Renta's voice turned sharp. It's exceeding safety parameters." Valkesk rushed to the console. The destroyer's power signature was changing, morphing into something that defied their understanding of physics. "That's impossible. We removed their restrictive containment protocols." The protocols, a quiet voice said from behind them, were not restrictive. They were adaptive. Admiral Chen stood in the doorway, still wearing that infuriating smile. She hadn't left the system, despite the Imperium's demands. "What are you doing to our ships?" Valkesk demanded. "We're not doing anything. You are." She walked to the viewport, watching the destroyer's erratic movements. Human engineering isn't about achieving maximum performance. It's about surviving when that performance inevitably fails. The destroyer's engines flared brilliant blue, then purple, then a color Valkesk had no name for. The energy readings were unlike anything their sensors had ever recorded. "You see," Chen continued, "we learned long ago that any system can be pushed beyond its limits. The trick isn't preventing that. It's controlling what happens next." Renta's displays erupted with warnings. "The power signature, it's evolving, changing, like it's learning." "Beautiful, isn't it?" Chen's reflection smiled in the viewport. "You thought you were studying our technology, but our technology was studying you." Valkesk watched in horror as the destroyer's hull began to pulse with strange energies. The modifications they'd made, the improvements they'd been so proud of, they weren't making the ship more powerful. They were making it hungry. "We built the Thermopylae systems to be copied," Chen said softly, "to be improved by someone who thought they knew better. Every enhancement you made has only fed the evolution protocols." Through the viewport, 4 more destroyers emerged from hyperspace, their hulls already showing signs of the same transformation. "The demonstration fleet," Renta whispered. "We upgraded them all with the new systems." Chen turned to leave. "I'd start evacuating those ships if I were you. When human technology evolves beyond its constraints, it tends to get creative." The destroyer's hull rippled like liquid metal, and Valkesk realized they hadn't escaped the trap. They'd only begun to understand it. Alarms screamed across 5 decks of the Imperial flagship as Valkesk raced through emergency protocols. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to contain the cascading systems failures spreading through their fleet. Shutdown sequence rejected. Renta's crystals had taken on a sickly hue of stress. The reactors won't accept override commands. Valkesk's appendages flew across 3 interfaces simultaneously. The human-derived systems weren't just malfunctioning. They were actively resisting attempts to control them. Each improvement they'd made had stripped away another layer of safety protocols. Protocols they now realized were the only things keeping the technology in check. "All ships reporting critical power fluctuations," a tactical officer announced. "The destroyer Inevitable Dawn has lost artificial gravity. The Crystal Sword's weapon systems are cycling without authorization." Through the viewport, Valkesk watched his modified fleet tear itself apart from the inside. Energy patterns rippled across their hulls like neural activity, each ship's systems evolving in different, unpredictable ways. "We have to reach the core baseline," Valkesk muttered, diving deeper into the code. "If we can just reset to the original human configurations." A new alarm cut through the chaos. Long-range sensors blazed with contacts. Multiple hyperspace signatures. The tactical officer's voice cracked. Mreka warfleet dropping into real space. Valkesk's hearts stopped. The Mreka. Their ancient enemies, opportunistic raiders who'd warred with the Imperium for centuries. They must have detected the energy signatures of the malfunctioning fleet. The first Mreka dreadnought emerged from hyperspace directly ahead of them. Then another. And another. Valkesk counted 20 capital ships, their distinctive blade-shaped hulls bristling with weapons. "They're charging weapons," Renta shouted. "Our shields, they're not responding." Valkesk slammed his appendage against the emergency broadcast control. "All ships, emergency jump tow." The words died in his throat as every display on the bridge went dark. The low hum of the ship's systems, a sound so constant they normally didn't even notice it, faded to silence. In the sudden quiet, a single human voice echoed through the bridge speakers. "Adaptive Protocol Stage 3 complete," it said calmly. "Test results. Sktheri engineering modification attempts. Failure. Threat assessment. Severe. Implementing containment procedures." The Thermopylae, silent for so long, suddenly lit up with power signatures unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its hull began to transform, not with the chaotic evolution of their copied systems, but with purposeful, deliberate change. "This was never about improving our technology," Valkesk whispered, understanding finally dawning. "This was about proving we couldn't." The first Mreka salvos streaked across space as their fleet hung helpless, trapped between an ancient enemy and the consequences of their own arrogance. And somewhere in the darkness, Admiral Chen's words echoed. "The countdown has already begun." The first Mreka volley tore through the unpowered shields of 2 Sktheri cruisers, their crystalline hulls shattering into space. Valkesk watched helplessly as his species' technological superiority crumbled in real time. "Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, Renta reported, her voice hollow. "Emergency containment failing. We're losing atmospheric pressure in the aft sections." The Thermopylae's transformation had completed. Where once hung a battered warship now floated something else entirely. Sleek, predatory, and humming with power that their sensors couldn't even classify. A new message scrolled across Valkesk's emergency terminal. Access granted to file TH-7749. Emergency protocol documentation. His appendages trembled as he opened it. To whom it may concern. Our technology is designed to fail safely in enemy hands. Each system is engineered to appear primitive, to invite improvement, to beg for enhancement. Every flaw is a carefully crafted lure. Did you really think we'd leave a working warship for anyone to find? The good news, your ships can be saved. The bad news, you won't like how. Office of Naval Intelligence, Human Systems Alliance. Another Mrekka barrage illuminated space. The Crystal Sword, their newest destroyer, split in half as its reactor finally lost containment. Imperial Command is offline. Renta's crystals had gone almost white with stress. We're receiving distress calls from all sectors. The copied systems, they're spreading through our entire defense network. Valkesk's third heart nearly stopped as he saw new ships appearing on the long-range sensors. Human signatures, dozens of them, moving with purpose. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through their dying comm system. Xtheri flagship, this is the Human Systems Alliance. We're moving to contain the situation. Do not, repeat, do not attempt to engage your weapons or engines. Your systems are now operating under our protocols. You're here to help us. Valkesk asked, desperate hope in his voice. No. Chen's tone was cold. We're here to prevent your technological arrogance from destabilizing this entire sector. The Thermopylae was a vaccine, a controlled dose of human engineering to prove you weren't ready for the real thing. Through the viewport, Valkesk watched human warships move into formation. They were nothing like the Thermopylae's original form. They were works of art, technology so advanced it bordered on the incomprehensible. The Mrekka will destroy us, he whispered. No, Chen replied. They won't, because now you're going to watch what real human warships can do. Pay attention, Valkesk. This is what you thought you were ready to improve upon. The human fleet engaged, and Valkesk finally understood the true price of his people's pride. They had never been the teachers. They had always been the students. The human fleet moved like dancers in a lethal choreography. Valkesk watched as ships no larger than Xtheri corvettes shrugged off hits that had shattered his largest cruisers. Their weapons didn't just penetrate Mrekka shields, they ignored them entirely. Energy readings are impossible, Renta whispered, her sensors struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. They're using the fabric of space itself as both weapon and armor. A Mrekka dreadnought, pride of their fleet, fired its main gun at a human frigate. The beam should have vaporized anything smaller than a capital ship. Instead, the frigate's hull rippled, absorbed the energy, and redirected it in a casual display of physics mastery that made Valkesk's scientific mind reel. That's what real redundancy looks like. Admiral Chen's voice had lost its edge of mockery, replaced by professional pride. Every system backing up every other system, not in layers, but in dimensions. When one system fails, space itself compensates. The transformed Thermopylae moved to the front of the human formation. Its new form finally made sense to Valkesk. It had become what it was always meant to be. The primitive shell had been a chrysalis, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Watch carefully, Chen commanded. You wanted to understand human engineering. Here's your lesson. The Thermopylae's hull fractured into 1,000 geometric impossibilities. Where the Xtheri had seen crude armor plating, quantum matrices now bloomed. The reactor they'd mocked as inefficient now pulsed with contained singularities. By the first light, Renta breathed. The redundancies weren't for survival. They were for this. The Thermopylae engaged. It didn't fire weapons. It rewrote local spacetime. Mrekka ships found themselves fighting an enemy that existed in multiple states simultaneously, their targeting computers having existential crises as they tried to lock onto something that refused to commit to a single position in spacetime. Your improvements to our technology, Chen explained, almost gently now. We're like a child trying to improve a quantum computer by making it bigger. You didn't fail because you're inferior. You failed because you weren't ready to understand. A Mreka battlecruiser attempted to retreat. The Thermopyla simply reached out with a tendril of twisted space and pulled it back. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in minutes. This, Valkesk realized, this is why you let us find it, why you let us try to copy it. You needed to show us that there are depths to human engineering you haven't even begun to grasp. Chen finished. The Thermopyla wasn't just a trap, it was a test. And now, she paused as the human fleet surrounded the crippled Scatheri ships, their impossible geometries rippling with barely contained power. Now we need to have a very serious discussion about your species' future in this sector. Your entire understanding of physics is a subset of our engineering failures. Valkesk sat in the Thermopyla's newly revealed command center, surrounded by technology that made his most advanced theories look like a child's drawings. Admiral Chen stood before a wall that wasn't there, manipulating displays that existed in dimensions his eyes couldn't fully process. Every technology you copied, she continued, was something we tried and discarded centuries ago. Not because it didn't work, but because we found better ways. Ways that required a fundamental shift in how we thought about reality itself. The display showed the progression of human engineering, from designs similar to current Scatheri technology, through iterations that became increasingly abstract, until they reached concepts that made Valkesk's crystalline structure ache from trying to comprehend them. Your gravitic shielding. Chen gestured, and a simulation appeared. We used that as radiation shielding on our first Mars colonies. Those quantum pathways you're so proud of. They were a stepping stone to actual quantum manipulation. Everything you saw as the peak of technology, we saw as primitive tools. But why? Valkesk's voice cracked. Why let us find the Thermopyla? Why not just demonstrate your superiority from the start? Chen's expression softened slightly. Because of what you're feeling right now. That mixture of awe, fear, and understanding. We needed you to learn this lesson yourself, to experience firsthand why technological arrogance is so dangerous. She waved a hand, and the room filled with images of other species, other civilizations. Some Valkesk recognized, others were completely unknown to him. You're not the first race we've tested this way. You won't be the last. Each time we expand into a new sector, we find more civilizations convinced they're at the peak of technological achievement. And each time, we have to decide, are they ready to learn there's more? Can they handle knowing just how much more? The images shifted to show disasters, worlds torn apart by misused technology, civilizations that had destroyed themselves trying to reach too far, too fast. The Thermopyla wasn't just a trap or a test, Chen said quietly. It was a mercy. A controlled demonstration of your limitations before you encountered something you couldn't handle, something that would have destroyed your entire civilization. Valkesk watched recordings of the battle, seeing how easily the human ships had contained both the Mreka and the corrupted Scatheri vessels. Not with brute force, but with such advanced technology that it appeared almost casual. Your engineering, he finally said, it's not about efficiency or power at all, is it? No. Chen smiled, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in it. It's about responsibility, about understanding that just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. She turned to him, and in her eyes, he saw the weight of centuries of human advancement. The question is, Valkesk, are you ready to learn what comes next? 1 year later, Valkesk stood before the Scatheri High Council, his crystalline form reflecting the light differently now, altered by the knowledge he carried. Behind him, a holographic display showed the new joint Human Scatheri Research Institute under construction. The humans have approved the release of their basic temporal engineering principles, he announced to the assembled leaders. But first, they require me to show you something. With a gesture, he activated the classified training simulation he'd been given permission to share. The council chamber darkened as a perfect recreation of their home system appeared around them. "This," he said quietly, "is what would have happened if they hadn't stopped us." The simulation showed their copy technology evolving unchecked, spreading through their network like a virus. Ships twisted into impossible shapes. Reactors collapsed into artificial singularities. Defense platforms turned into space-time anomalies. Within weeks, their entire civilization collapsed into a quantum catastrophe that consumed their sun. "We thought we were improving on primitive human designs," Valkesk continued as the horror played out. "In reality, we were children playing with stripped-down versions of apocalyptic technology, thinking we could improve it by making it more efficient." He deactivated the simulation, letting the council process what they'd seen. Admiral Chen stood at the back of the chamber, a silent observer to this moment of transformation. "The humans didn't share their real technology with us because we weren't ready," Valkesk explained. "Not just technically, but philosophically. Their engineering isn't about making things more powerful. It's about understanding the responsibility that comes with power." He brought up the plans for the research institute. "They're offering to teach us now. Not their most advanced technology, but something more valuable. Their methodology, their philosophy, the way they think about progress itself." The council leader's crystals chimed thoughtfully. "And what guarantee do we have that they won't simply use this institute to control our development?" Admiral Chen stepped forward then, carrying a small device. She placed it on the council table, and it projected an image that made every Scytheri in the room freeze in awe. "This," she said, "is a standard human emergency beacon, the kind we give to civilian ships. Study it. Try to understand it. When you can explain to us how it works, not just technically, but ethically, you'll be ready for the next level." Valkesk examined the beacon with his new understanding. Its design was elegant, beautiful, and somehow both simple and impossibly complex. It was a test, a teaching tool, and a promise all in one. "We accept," the council leader announced. Chen smiled. "Then let me officially welcome the Scytheri to humanity's junior engineering program. Trust me, you're going to love what comes next." Valkesk looked at the beacon, then at his transformed people, and understood at last. The Thermopylae hadn't been a trap. It had been an invitation.